My father's text arrived at 7,058 on a Tuesday morning, 2 minutes before I usually silenced my phone. Mom and I need to talk to you about Christmas. It's important. Can you come over tonight? I read it 3 times. 12 years of being invisible, and suddenly, they needed me. I didn't feel angry. I felt something colder. Something that had been waiting a long time. I sat at my kitchen table and pulled up the folder I'd kept for 6 years. The trust documents my grandmother's lawyer had emailed me. The deed to the cabin on Birch Lake. The tax receipts. The screenshots of every Christmas text where they'd blown me off. If this story moves you, please take a second to subscribe to Revenge, Lily. It helps more than you know. Now, let me tell you how it started. I'm Claire Mitchell, 34 years old, high school librarian. The quiet daughter, the one who never made a fuss. From 2011 onward, I spent every Christmas alone. My parents hosted big family dinners at their house in town. My sister Melanie brought her friends, her colleagues, her clients from her real estate office. But I was told there wasn't room, too many people. The guest list was full. Maybe next year, sweetie. I have 17 text messages saved that prove it. Sorry, Claire, we're already at capacity. Maybe next year, honey, you wouldn't fit in with the crowd. I never complained. Instead, I paid my mother's medical bills, $12,000 for her knee surgery and follow-ups over 3 years. I co-signed my father's business loan, $30,000 in 2018. He still owed $15,000. And I paid for the cabin. Grandma Eleanor left me the cabin on Birch Lake in an irrevocable trust in 2008. Sole beneficiary, no exceptions. My parents didn't know. Melanie didn't know. Grandma had watched how they treated me. She saw everything. For 6 years, I paid the property taxes. $14,000 total. I paid for a new roof and new plumbing. $8,000. I have every receipt in a folder. I used my librarian's salary, the one they thought was too modest to matter. I also have every single text message they sent me from 2011 onward. Every Christmas invitation that never came. Every excuse they handed me like scraps. So when my father texted me on December 5th, 2023 at 7:58 in the morning asking me to come over and talk about Christmas, I suspected they wanted something from me. I smiled. I typed back, "Sure, Dad, 7 o'clock. Then I opened the trust documents one more time. I checked the date. 2008, irrevocable, my name. Only my name. That night, I drove to my parents' house. I parked at the curb and sat in my car for a moment. The lights were on inside. I could see Melanie's SUV in the driveway. I grabbed my purse. No folder. Not yet. I walked up to the front door and knocked. My mother opened it with that uncertain smile she always wore when she wanted something. "Claire, sweetheart, come in. Your father's in the den, sweetheart." She hadn't called me that in years. I stepped inside. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, covered in ornaments I remembered from childhood. But my name wasn't on any of them. Melanie was sitting on the couch, legs crossed, phone in her hand. She looked up and gave me a plastic smile. "Claire, thanks for coming." Like I was a guest. Like I'd been invited. My father walked in. Robert Mitchell, 65 years old, retired contractor, still carrying himself like he ran the world. He sat down in the armchair and folded his hands. "Thanks for coming, Claire. We have something important to discuss." I sat down across from him. "I'm listening." He took a breath. "Your mother and I are in some trouble. Financial trouble. We might lose the house." My mother looked at the floor. Melanie watched me. "We need to sell the cabin," my father said. "It's the only asset we have that can cover what we owe. Melanie thinks we could get $350,000 for it." I said nothing. "We need you to agree," he continued. "We know Grandma left it to you, but it's for the family. For all of us." I let the silence hang. Then I spoke. "I understand you need help. I'll host Christmas at the cabin this year. One dinner. Then we can talk." Their faces relaxed. Relief flooded the room. "That's very generous, Claire," my mother said. Melanie nodded. "We'll figure out the details after the holidays." I smiled. Of course. They had no idea what they just walked into. I stayed for another hour, making small talk. When I left, I drove home and called David Chen, the estate attorney. "Claire," he said, "that cabin is yours. Irrevocable trust. They can't touch it without your signature and you're not giving it. I know, I said. He paused. Are you sure you want to do this? Completely. I hung up and sat in the dark. I was calm. I was patient. And I was ready. I pulled into my parents' driveway at exactly 7 that evening. The house looked tired, paint peeling near the gutters. A crack running down the front step I'd noticed last summer but hadn't mentioned. I sat in the car for a moment, engine idling, watching the living room curtains glow. I'd been here 1,000 times. Always the same feeling, I was a guest in someone else's story. I walked in through the front door. My mother was in the kitchen, stirring something in a pot. She looked up and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Claire, sweetie, thank you for coming. Of course, Mom. My father sat in his recliner, pretending to read the newspaper. He didn't look up. That was normal. Melanie was already there, perched on the edge of the couch, phone in hand. She gave me a quick once-over. You look tired, Claire. Long day at the library? Fine. She didn't ask again. She never did. My father cleared his throat, folded the newspaper, set it on the side table. Let's get to it then. Come sit down. I sat across from him. My mother joined Melanie on the couch. The coffee table between us was empty except for a coaster and a pen. Your mother and I have hit a rough patch, my father said. Financial. You know how business has been slow since the recession. The contracting work dried up. I knew. I'd co-signed his $30,000 business loan in 2018. He still owed $15,000. I never reminded him. The mortgage is behind, he continued. 32 months. The bank has started foreclosure proceedings. He said it like he was reading the weather. Flat, matter of fact. My mother looked down. Melanie nodded along like she'd heard this before. When? I asked. We have until March. After that, we lose the house. The house you grew up in, my mother added softly. Silence. I waited. That's where the cabin comes in, my father said, leaning forward. Grandma Eleanor's place on Birch Lake. It's been in the family for 40 years. Valued at $350. We sell it, we cover the mortgage and have enough left over to start fresh. Melanie finally looked up from her phone. I've already spoken to a listing agent I work with. She said we could have offers within 2 weeks. Market's hot on lake properties right now. And your cut? I asked. Melanie's eyes narrowed. I'm not taking a commission. I'm helping the family. She said it like it was already decided. My father continued. We've been calling the cabin a family asset for years. Grandma never filed any paperwork to change the ownership structure. So it passes evenly between me and your mother, which means we control the sale. I said nothing. It's not worth arguing about boundaries or inheritance, my father said. This is about keeping the family intact. I felt something solid in my chest. Calm. Heavy. Like a stone I'd been carrying for 12 years and finally placed exactly where it needed to be. Okay, I said. They looked at me, surprised, expecting resistance. I'll host Christmas at the cabin this year, I said. One dinner. Let's have the whole family there, the aunts and uncles and cousins. I'll make it special. My mother's face lit up. Really, Claire? Viclini. Melanie tilted her head. And after that? We start the process? One thing at a time. Let's have the dinner. Then we'll talk. My father settled back into his chair. The tension leaped out of him. Good. That's good. Thank you, Claire. I smiled. You're welcome. We sat through dinner. Pot roast, potatoes, green beans from a can. Melanie talked about her new listing. My mother asked about my job. My father watched the television in the corner with the sound off. I answered politely. Helped with the dishes. Said goodbye at the door. I sat in my car for a moment in the driveway. Then I drove home. My hands were steady on the wheel. At 9 o'clock I called David Chen. Claire, he said. That cabin is yours, irrevocable trust. Signed in 2008, recorded with the county. They can't touch it without your signature, and you're not giving it. I know, I said, but I want to file something. A notice of trust with the county recorder. So if they try to move forward with a sale, it blocks them immediately. Smart. I can have the paperwork ready by end of business tomorrow. Good. He paused. Are you sure you want to do this? Once you file, they'll know. Let them know. I hung up and sat in the dark. My phone screen glowed. I opened the folder of text messages. The one from Christmas 2011. Sorry, Claire, too many people already for dinner. Maybe next year, sweetie. The year after that, Melanie's in-laws will be here. It would be awkward if you came. The year after that, we think you'd prefer a quiet holiday with your friends. We understand. 17 texts, 17 rejections. I'd saved every single one. I scrolled through them slowly. Then I put the phone down and looked out the window. They thought I was easy, the quiet one, the one who never pushed back. They thought they knew what I was capable of. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. 6:30. The cabin was quiet, lake still dark through the windows. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I had 18 days until Christmas Eve. 18 days to make sure everything was ready. I started with the bank. Logged into my account and pulled up every property tax payment I'd made since 2017. 6 years of transactions. I highlighted them all and hit print. The printer hummed in the corner of my grandmother's old bedroom. Page after page, each one showing my name, my account, my money. $14,000, every penny. Then I pulled up the receipts from the contractor. New roof in 2019. $7,400. New plumbing in 2021. The rest, I had paid for both. My grandmother's cabin had a leaky roof the year she died. I remembered her telling me, Claire, that roof won't last another winter. So I fixed it. I fixed everything. I printed those receipts too. $8,000 in maintenance. Next, the screenshots. I opened my phone and went through every message. The ones from my mother, the ones from my father, the ones from Melanie, 17 texts total. I scrolled through them slowly, reading each one again. Sorry, Claire, too many people already for dinner. Maybe next year, sweetie. We think you'd prefer a quiet holiday with your friends. We understand. Melanie's in-laws will be here. It would be awkward if you came. Each one was saved. Each one was dated. I took screenshots of all 17 and printed them in a single document. 17 pages, one for each rejection. I stacked everything in a neat pile. Trust summary on top. Then the deed. Then the tax receipts. Then the maintenance receipts. Then the screenshots. Then the letter from David Chen confirming the trust was irrevocable. I slid it all into a clean manila folder. Plain, professional, nothing dramatic. At 10 o'clock, I drove to Mrs. Patterson's house. She lived 2 miles from the cabin, in the same little yellow house where she'd lived near my grandmother for 40 years. The porch light was on. She was expecting me. She opened the door before I knocked. Claire Mitchell, Jr. I stepped inside. The house smelled like cinnamon and old wood. Same smell as when I was a child. She led me to the kitchen and put a kettle on without asking. So, she said, your mother called me. I sat down at her kitchen table. What did she say? That you're hosting Christmas, and that your father wants to sell the cabin. She shook her head. I told your mother I thought that was a wonderful idea. You hosting, I mean, not the selling part. Did you say anything about the trust? Darlin', I didn't say a word. She poured hot water into 2 cups. I've known about that trust since the day your grandmother signed it. He told me everything. I pulled the folder from my bag and opened it on the table. I have everything here. The deed, the tax receipts, the texts. I'm planning to present it all at dinner. Mrs. Patterson sat down across from me and looked at the papers. She picked up the trust summary and read it silently. Then she set it down. Your grandmother would be proud of you, Claire. She knew what she was doing when she left you this cabin. She knew your father would try to sell it out from under you. Why didn't she just leave it to me outright? Because she knew your family. She knew if it was just a simple inheritance, your father would contest it. This way, it's ironclad. An irrevocable trust can't be undone. Not by them. Not by anyone. I nodded. David Chen had said the same thing. I need you to be there on Christmas Eve, I said. I need you to be a witness. Mrs. Patterson reached across the table and took my hand. Her palm was warm and papery. Honey, I wouldn't miss it for the world. I've been waiting 12 years for someone in your family to get what's coming to them. I'm just sorry it had to be you. It had to be me, I said, because I'm the only one who kept the cabin alive. She smiled, a real smile. Your grandmother used to say you were the only one who understood what that place meant. It was right. I closed the folder and tucked it back into my bag. "I'll be there at 6, Mrs. Patterson said. "On the dot. I'll bring a plate of cookies and my best pair of eyes." I stood up to leave. She walked me to the door and patted my arm. "Claire, one more thing." I turned. "Your grandmother told me that trust was her way of giving you a foundation. She said you were the only one in your family who knew how to build something solid. Don't let them tear it down." I hugged her. She smelled like cinnamon and lavender. "I won't," I said. I drove home with the folder on the passenger seat. The lake was gray and still. The cabin looked small from the road, but it was mine. Every board, every nail, every receipt in that folder. I had my evidence. I had Mrs. Patterson. I had David Chen on speed dial, and I had 18 days until Christmas Eve. I smiled in the dark. I spent the next 2 weeks in a strange kind of calm. I went to work. I checked out books to teenagers who barely looked up from their phones. I ate dinner alone at my kitchen table. And every night, I added something to the folder. I made copies of the trust summary, one for each adult at the dinner. 12 copies. I bought a new pack of manila folders and labeled each one with a name and a sticky note that said, "Read this carefully." I called David Chen on December 10th. He confirmed the notice of trust had been recorded with the county. "It's public record now," he said. "Anyone who runs a title search will see it. The cabin cannot be sold without your signature." "Good," I said. I did not tell my parents. I did not tell Melanie. I let them believe the dinner was a peace offering. My mother called me 3 times that week. Each time, her voice was light and grateful, the way it used to be when I was a child and she needed me to watch Melanie while she ran errands. "I'm so glad you're doing this, Claire," she said on December 20th. "Your father has been in such a good mood all week. He really thinks this is going to work out." "Good," I said again. "I want everyone to enjoy the evening." "Oh, we will. Mrs. Patterson called me, by the way. She said you invited her." "That's right." "That's so sweet of you, honey. She's been lonely since Eleanor passed." I said nothing. I could feel the shape of the folder in my bag, even when it was sitting on my dining table. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear. The lake was frozen at the edges. Frost clung to the cabin windows like lace. I had spent the morning cooking a ham, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole. The recipes my grandmother had written in her own hand in a spiral notebook I found in the kitchen cabinet. I set the table with her china, white plates with tiny blue flowers around the rim. I had never used them before. I kept them wrapped in newspaper, stacked on a high shelf because I was afraid of breaking them. But this was the night. If I broke a plate, I broke a plate. The first guests arrived at 5030, my Aunt Carol and Uncle Mark. They hugged me and said the cabin looked beautiful. I smiled and thanked them. They had not spoken to me in 4 years. My cousins came next, a few of my father's old friends from his contracting days. People I had not seen in a decade. They all said the same things. "So glad you're hosting. This place brings back memories. Your grandmother would be so happy." I poured wine. I passed appetizers. I kept moving. My cousins followed at 552. My parents walked in at 5548. My father wore a sweater I had never seen. My mother had put on lipstick and curled her hair. She looked like she was going to a wedding. Melanie came in behind them at 5052. She was dressed in a red silk blouse and black pants, like she was hosting an open house. She air-kissed my cheek and said, "Great turnout, Claire. You really pulled it off." "Thank you," I said. Mrs. Patterson arrived at 5052. She was wearing a teal jacket and carrying a pie dish. "Apple cranberry," she said, handing it to me. "Your grandmother's recipe." I thanked her and showed her to her seat. She sat at the end of the table, next to the window. She caught my eye once and nodded. That was all. Dinner started at 6:00 sharp. It was loud. People talked over each other. My father told stories about the cabin summers long ago, the time he fell off the dock. Melanie laughed at everything he said. My mother kept refilling glasses and saying how nice it was to have everyone together. I ate my food. I answered questions about my job. I said yes when someone asked if I was seeing anyone. I said no when someone asked if I'd ever thought about moving. Patterson ate her pie. She did not say much. But she watched. At 7:45, my father stood up. He tapped his wine glass with a spoon. Ting, ting, ting. The table went quiet. He cleared his throat. "I want to say something." He looked around the room. He looked at Melanie. He looked at my mother. He looked at me last. First, I want to thank Claire for hosting tonight. It means a lot to your mother and me. It really does. We'd had some hard times this year, and this place. This place has always been the heart of this family. People nodded. A few said, "Here, here." So I'm glad to say we've got some good news. We've received an offer on the cabin, a solid offer. We're planning to accept it in the new year. It'll allow us to take care of some things at home and make sure everyone gets something from this property. He smiled. Eleanor would want it this way. He raised his glass. To Eleanor. The table raised their glasses. To Eleanor. I did not raise my glass. I set down my fork. I stood up slowly. I reached under my chair and pulled out the bag I had carried in from the car. Inside was a stack of folders, 12 of them. I placed one in front of my mother, one in front of my father, one in front of Melanie. "What's this?" my father said, his glass still raised. "Read it," I said. Melanie opened hers first. She scanned the first page. Her face did not change at first. Then she went still. The color drained from her cheeks. My mother looked at hers and said, "Claire, what is this?" "It's the trust summary," I said, "for the cabin." My father set down his glass. "I know about the trust. Your grandmother left it to the family." "No," I said, "she didn't." I opened my own folder and pulled out the original trust document, the one with Eleanor Vance's signature, dated 2008. I held it up so everyone could see. This is an irrevocable trust. It names one beneficiary, not the family, not you, not Melanie. I paused. Me. The silence was like a physical weight. "The cabin is mine," I said. "Solely. Irrevocably. You have no right to sell it, and I have no intention of doing so." My father stared at me. His face was red. His mouth opened and closed. Linda started crying. Soft, helpless sobs. "Claire, honey, please. We're your family." "I know," I said. "I've been your family every Christmas for 12 years, and you've had no room for me. Now you have no claim to this cabin. I'm sorry you're losing your house, but that is not my responsibility. This cabin is mine." Melanie's face was white. She looked at me and said, "You planned this." "Yes," I said. "I did." I reached into my bag again and pulled out the notice of trust. "I filed this with the county recorder on December 7th. Any attempt to sell this property will be blocked. Guide law." My father slammed his hand on the table. The plates rattled. "You can't do this." "I already did," I said. "You can check with the county tomorrow. Or you can call David Chen. He's the executor. He'll confirm everything." I sat down. I folded my hands in my lap. Patterson took a sip of her coffee and said nothing. The cabin was silent except for my mother's crying and the wind outside. No one took another bite of pie. The silence stretched for a full 10 seconds. Then my father stood up so fast his chair scraped backward against the hardwood floor. "You brought strangers into this house to humiliate us?" His voice was loud. "Shaky. After everything we've done for you?" I stayed seated. I folded my hands on top of the folder. "Everything you've done for me," I repeated slowly. "Let's talk about that." I reached into the folder again. I pulled out a stack of receipts held together with a paperclip. I set them on the table. "Property taxes," I said. $14,000, paid in full since 2017. Every single year while you told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas. My mother's crying got louder. Melanie stared at the receipts like they were a threat. "There's more." I pulled out another stack. "Maintenance. $8,000, new roof in 2019. New plumbing in 2021. I paid for both. You never asked. Never offered." I slid the receipts across the table toward my father. He didn't touch them. "That's $22,000 I put into a cabin you thought you could sell," I said. "Money I saved while working as a librarian. Money I should have spent on my own life." My father's face was red. His jaw was tight. "You chose to pay those. No one asked you to." "That's true," I said. "No one asked. No one thanked me either. But you were happy to let me keep paying." Melanie slammed her hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. You think you're so clever? You think you can just destroy the family because Grandma left you a cabin?" I looked at her. I kept my voice flat. Grandma left me the cabin because she knew what you would do to me if she didn't, I said. She saw it coming. She made sure I was protected. Melanie stood up, her chair nearly tipped over. I'm not listening to this. Then leave, I said. The door's right there. She didn't move. She stood there breathing hard, her hands balled into fists. My mother wiped her eyes with her napkin. Claire, please, we're still family. We can work this out. I turned to her. My mother. The woman who had watched me be excluded for 12 years. The woman who never picked up the phone. No, I said, we're not. Her face crumpled. She started sobbing again. I reached into the folder one last time. I pulled out a single sheet of paper with my terms written on them. I slid it across the table. If you want to spend future holidays at this cabin, here are the conditions, I said. Full repayment of the $22,000 for taxes and maintenance. A written apology for every single Christmas you excluded me. Starting with 2011. My father grabbed the paper, he read it. Then he tore it in half. You're a traitor, he said. After everything we sacrificed for you, I stood up. For the first time that night, I let myself look him in the eye. Sacrifice, I said. That's a funny word coming from you. I co-signed your $30,000 business loan in 2018. You still owe $15,000. I paid Mom's medical bills. $12,000 over 3 years. You never paid me back a penny. I let that sit. You want to talk about sacrifice? I've been the one sacrificing, for years, while you spent Christmases with Melanie and her perfect life. My father opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time in my life, he had nothing to say. Melanie grabbed her coat. I'm done. I'm not staying here while she plays victim. She stormed toward the door. My mother followed, still crying. My father stood frozen for a long moment, staring at the torn paper on the table. You'll regret this, Melanie said from the doorway. Her voice was sharp, a threat. I smiled. I kept my voice calm. No, Melanie, I won't. She slammed the door. My father grabbed his coat and followed her without looking back. My mother paused at the door, her hand on the frame, her face wet. Claire, she whispered. I said nothing. She turned and left. The door clicked shut. The cabin was quiet again. Patterson set down her coffee cup. Well, she said. That went about how I expected. I sat down. I picked up my fork. I took a bite of pie. An apple cranberry pie, made with the same recipe my grandmother used every Christmas. The one she taught me when I was 12 years old. I chewed. I swallowed. The cabin was warm. The fire crackled. The frozen lake gleamed silver in the moonlight through the window. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. Yet I felt free. 3 months passed. I didn't hear from my parents. I didn't expect to. The foreclosure happened in March. I found out from a public notice in the local paper. My mother's name, my father's name, the address I'd grown up in. The house went through foreclosure with $180,000 outstanding. Not enough to cover what they owed. Not enough to save face. David Chen called me the following week. He said the bank had sent him a copy of the deficiency judgment. My parents still owed money they didn't have. They'd moved into a rental on the other side of town, a 2-bedroom apartment above a garage. My mother had taught 2nd grade for 30 years. My father had owned his own contracting business, and now they lived above a stranger's garage. I didn't call them. I didn't visit. I sat in my living room and stared at the phone. It didn't ring. Melanie stopped speaking to me entirely. That part I noticed. She unfriended me on social media. She blocked my number. I heard through a former coworker that she told people I'd stolen the cabin. She said I'd brainwashed our grandmother before she died. She said a lot of things. None of them were true. I didn't defend myself. I didn't post anything. I just let the words hang in the air like smoke. People who mattered already knew the truth. People who didn't matter weren't worth my breath. Spring came to Birch Lake. The ice melted. The loons returned. I drove out to the cabin most weekends. I replaced the porch railing myself. I painted the trim a soft gray. I planted daffodils along the path my grandmother used to walk. Mrs. Patterson came over with coffee and sat on the porch while I worked. Your grandmother would be proud, she said one afternoon. She was watching me hammer a loose board. The sun was warm. The lake was blue. I hope so, I said. She knew what she was doing, Mrs. Patterson said. She saw it coming. She wanted to protect you. I hammered another nail. I thought about my grandmother. I thought about the Christmas she pulled me aside and told me to never let anyone make me small. I was 12. I didn't understand then. I understood now. Summer drifted into fall. I turned 35. I had a small party at the cabin, a few friends from the library, a couple of neighbors. Mrs. Patterson brought a lemon cake. We sat on the dock and watched the sun set. Nobody mentioned my family. Nobody asked. It was the best birthday I'd had in years. In November, I got a text from my mother. It said, "I hope you're well," just that. No apology, no repayment, no acknowledgement of anything. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I silenced the conversation. I never replied. December arrived. The lake froze at the edges again. The cabin smelled like pine and wood smoke. I decorated a small tree I cut from the woods behind the property. I hung my grandmother's old ornaments, a ceramic angel with a chipped wing, a glass snowman missing one arm. They were imperfect. They were mine. On Christmas Eve, I invited Mrs. Eve Patterson and 3 friends from work. We roasted marshmallows in the fireplace. We drank hot chocolate with peppermint sticks. We played board games until midnight. Patterson fell asleep on the couch around 11. One of my friends tucked a blanket around her. I sat by the fire and watched the flames. The cabin was warm, the windows were frosty. The silence was the kind that didn't hurt. I thought about the 12 Christmases I'd spent alone, eating takeout in my apartment, watching movies, telling myself it didn't matter. It had mattered. It had mattered a lot, but not anymore. My grandmother left me this place for a reason, not because she loved me more than the others, because she knew I would take care of it, because she knew I understood what it meant to hold on to something real, something that couldn't be sold for a check or traded for a favor. The fire crackled. One of my friends laughed in her sleep. I looked around the room at the people who had chosen to be here. They hadn't come for the cabin. They hadn't come because they needed something. They came because they wanted to be with me. That was the difference. That was everything. I didn't miss my parents. I didn't miss Melanie. I didn't miss the hollow Christmas dinners where I sat at the edge of the table like a stranger. I didn't miss pretending I was grateful for scraps. I stoked the fire. I pulled the blanket up to my chin. I listened to the wind move through the pines outside. Family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. And when they only show up to take, you have every right to close the door. I closed mine, and the cabin stayed warm all winter long. I still get texts from my mother, not often. Maybe once a month. Little things. I hope you're well. The weather is turning cold. I saw someone who looked like you at the grocery store. I read them. I never reply. The first one came in November, about 11 months after the dinner. I stared at it for a long time. I hope you're well. I thought about the 12 Christmases where she didn't think of me. I thought about the texts I'd saved. Sorry, too many people already. Maybe next year, sweetie. I silenced the conversation and put my phone in my pocket. Some doors don't open again. That's not cruelty. That's math. I spent the spring fixing up the cabin. New porch railing. Fresh paint on the trim. I planted daffodils along the path to the lake, the same kind my grandmother grew. Mrs. Patterson came by every few weeks with coffee. She'd sit on the porch and watch me work. Your grandmother would be proud, she said one afternoon. I wiped dirt off my hands. You think so? I know so. She took a sip of her coffee. She told me once that you were the only one who understood what the cabin meant. She said the rest of them saw dollar signs. Right. I thought about that a lot. The cost of home. I'd paid $14,000 in property taxes since 2007, $8,000 in maintenance, new roof, new plumbing, keeping the place from falling into the lake. That's $22,000 out of my librarian's salary. Money I'd saved by eating leftover pasta for lunch and driving a 12-year-old car. Worth every penny. I turned 35 in July. A small birthday party at the cabin. Friends from the library. A few neighbors. Mrs. Patterson brought a lemon cake from the bakery in town. We sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the water. Someone asked if I ever regretted it. The confrontation. The lost family? No, I said, and I meant it. I lost people who never showed up. I kept the one thing that was mine. By December, the lake had frozen at the edges. I cut a small tree from the woods behind the cabin and carried it inside. I hung my grandmother's old ornaments, the ceramic angel with the chipped wing, the glass snowman missing one arm. They'd been in a box in the attic for years, waiting for someone to remember them. On Christmas Eve, I hosted a dinner. Patterson came. 3 friends from work. We ate roasted chicken and mashed potatoes and a pie I made myself from my grandmother's recipe. The same kind of apple cranberry pie Mrs. Patterson had brought the year before. This time, no one cried. No one screamed. No one tore up a piece of paper and stormed out into the snow. We sat by the fire and talked about nothing important. Books we'd read, trips we wanted to take, the way the light looked on the lake in winter. After everyone left, I stood at the window and watched the snow fall. The cabin was quiet. The fire crackled. I thought about the 12 Christmases I'd spent alone, the texts I'd saved, the years of being the invisible daughter who paid the bills and stayed silent. I wasn't silent anymore. I thought about my mother's texts sitting unanswered on my phone. I thought about my father, who'd called me a traitor in front of 30 people. I thought about Melanie, who told anyone who would listen that I'd stolen the cabin and brainwashed our grandmother. Let them believe what they wanted. The deed was in my name. The trust was irrevocable. The cabin was mine. And I had no regrets. I finally know what I'm worth. Not because someone told me, but because I proved it. $22,000. 2 decades of showing up for people who never showed up for me. A lifetime of being the daughter who paid and fixed and forgave and waited for a thank you that never came. I stopped waiting. I closed the door, and the cabin stayed warm all winter long. I'm Claire, and if this story meant something to you, please like and subscribe. I'll be back with another one soon.